You know what you can't stop? Progress. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Progress with Parker Duque and friends. I'm Parker Duque. I bumped the That's Great story I was going to start this episode with because I did something the other day and it wasn't just great. It was fantastic. I did something cool at work. Here's the setup. I'm 56, and I'm not in the hip zone a lot, nor am I able to pull off the cool lingo often. So when I do, I want to get credit for it, right? And yes, I know it's kind of thirsty of me, agreed. I don't care. You will recognize a pattern of embarrassing honesty on this podcast. I've let go of a lot of the pride that was previously holding me back. I'm okay with it. You should try it. Life is so much more fun when you can laugh at yourself. So in my case, I want my daughter to know about it. Not my wife. It would not interest her. Not my boys. They would be happy for me. But they're away at school. I want them to focus on that. I want my daughter to know about it. I probably shouldn't admit this out loud, but my daughter has some kind of magic power over me. I think there are probably a lot of dads in the same boat. For some reason, her approval matters more than others. I can't explain it, but it does. It does. To an extent, it's like I'm looking for approval, but I'm not. And she's the head of that committee. Would I like to be cooler to her in her eyes? Yeah. Is that a goal? Not especially. It's not attainable. I'd have a better chance of playing in the NFL. Her preference would be to shrink my overall involvement a bit. And then when we do interact, I should be flying in the hip zone and using cool lingo 100% of the time as to not embarrass her, which I get. I remember being her age. That's how I know what I'm up against. And those seem like reasonable terms. Problem is, currently, I'm just not cool. I couldn't do it if I wanted to. And even if I could, it's not worth the effort it would take. I put in just enough effort, to not be considered a lost cause. I'm aware there may be a smidgen of disappointment in her camp, but disappointment builds character. I do think she wants what's best for me, although her delivery could use a little bit of work, more specifically, maybe some softening. I can be sensitive. Her side eye, wicked. It's masterful. Cuts me to the bone. It's like I have failed so badly. She doesn't even want to put in the effort to show me the disappointment on her face. Just a side eye and cold as ice. We'll be on a walk. And I'll try to say something cool like, that's Cap. And if you don't land it right, which if you couldn't tell just there, I've never landed a that's Cap right, you can see it in her eye, in her side eye, just instant disappointment. However, when I do it right, I can see she's genuinely happy for me. And any speck of approval from her, it's like a powerful drug, like a make you run through a wall type of drug. I want more. So if flying in the hip zone has you confused, I apologize. It's an analogy I use. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Let's just say we're all flying our own planes through life, right? And in your natural state, you're gliding. You're putting in zero effort into life. That's who you are. Now, let's say as a scale, the higher you fly or glide, the cooler you are. And past a certain height is the hip zone. Most of us, myself included, glide well below the hip zone. However, there are outliers out there, some amazing people, very, very rare, and you know who they are the minute you meet them. They glide in the upper atmosphere, in the hip zone, well above everybody else, effortless. They're the ones that create all the turbulence in the lower hip zone. Because we would all love to be more like them, myself included. And because this is America, if you burn enough gas, put in the effort, anybody can fly themselves up into the hip zone. It's unregulated. It used to be easier to navigate. Now it's more like the Wild West, because now you can buy your way into the hip zone. There's a whole expanded, complicated spectrum of hip and coolness now. And it's super crowded. It's too much for me. Don't even try to ask me to point out a nerd these days. I can't. I'll probably pick out somebody cool. A lot of the times with the fashion now, I can't even tell if dude is a nerd or he's cool. Me? Personally, like I said, I put in just enough effort to be flying, let's say a couple clicks below the hip zone. That's where there's a lot less turbulence there. The don't embarrass your friends or family zone. Now, where is all this going? Every once in a while, I'll cook the jets. And I'll fly up into the hip zone, and I did it last week. That's why I bumped my other That's Great story. I have to share it. It's incredible. I was on a video call for work, and we were discussing a deal. It was about a $22, $23 million deal. Somebody asked what the equity requirement was. That's how much money it will take to buy the deal, and I knew the deal. And I did the math, and I said 6-7 million. Except I did a 6-7 motion as I said the 6-7 million. And let's be clear here. I don't even know what a 6-7 is. I wasn't thinking about that because my daughter had trained me for that moment. And I threw the 6-7. It was automatic. It was like a hiccup. I got goosebumps. I didn't even think about it. Well, remember how I told you guys how I work with some younger guys? Both of those guys were on the call. They saw it. Both of them did the 6-7 thing back to me. And because it was a bunch of unhip people talking about a boring real estate deal, it didn't interrupt the call. Nobody noticed my 6-7 or their return 6-7s, and we just kept going, which meant I legitimately pulled it off. I pulled off a 6-7 with my dudes. And the best part, if you ask me, is we didn't stop the conversation to recognize the 56-year-old dude flying his plane in the hip zone. Because when I say something hip in front of my daughter, she kind of ruins it by stopping the conversation and pointing it out. She's like, oh my God, Dad, that was perfect. No. I don't want people noticing I'm trying to be cool. That wrecks it. Everybody knows that. That's the rub. If you're like me and you're not naturally cool and you want to be a little bit cooler than you really are, you need to try to be cool. You have to put in some effort. And if people see you trying, that's not cool. You want it to go unnoticed. You don't want people to stop the conversation and say, hey, Good job, Unc. No, let me be one of you guys for a minute. And during that call, I was so pumped. I was the tourist that took the time to learn the local language, and the locals, they brought me in as one of their own. Oh, I was flying all right. I don't think I heard another word on that call for like 10 minutes. I was just soaking it in like a pig in slop, acting like nothing happened, of course, trying to be cool, trying to not look too excited about what I'd just done. And do you know the first thing I did after that call ended? That's right. I called my daughter to tell her about it. But she was working. She was in the middle of a lake, so it was impossible. And then I forgot to tell her. And then a couple days passed before I remembered again. And you know how that goes. A lot of the magic had worn off. And I'm not sure it had the impact that I thought it would. I felt like she'd still be really excited for me. Not really. She seemed happy-ish for me for throwing the 6-7, but she seemed a little concerned about how I was, kind of clinging on to an event that happened a couple days ago, which is funny because I debated waiting to tell her in person because in case she wanted to high five me, because at the time it seemed high five worthy. But when I told her, she was like, "Oh, cute." But in a, "Oh, what a sad life you must have, Dad," kind of way. She had a point. Like I said, I don't care. I nailed it. It was legit. She can't take that away from me. I will hold on to that forever. Isn't that great? To this day, I still don't know what a 6-7 is, but I feel like, who knows? There may be more. It was automatic. Maybe I'm getting hipper. Do you know what you can't stop? Progress. I had an idyllic childhood, or at least in my mind, it was idyllic. And let's get the obvious out of the way. As a straight white male, you could argue I've had a path as easy as it gets, and I wouldn't argue back. In fact, it doesn't stop there. I also had great parents, which that's the important piece of most puzzles, right? Well, I lucked out across the board, and I largely escaped childhood without any trauma. However, that's how they say it in this house. However, I did have one trauma-ish or trauma-light type situation that's still with me today. It's not impactful. It's just a quirk that's strong enough to survive 40 years. So, okay, maybe that does sound like a trauma, but I think you'll see it's not a big deal. And when I refer to myself and the life I have had as lucky, that's not lip service. In addition to all the great stuff that I was able to enjoy, I grew up in a tremendous hometown, Elgin, Illinois, as you know. Elgin was blue collar when I was there growing up. I'm not sure about it now. I think it might have gotten fancy on us. I'm not entirely sure. I know that South Elgin got fancy on us, and now Elgin has a Portillo's, so that's got to count for something. I mean, that's progress, isn't it? Actually, I think my buddy Harry might own Elgin now. If you're in that area, you need to go to either Rookies Any rookies or the village squire? He is the unofficial mayor of Elgin, and you cannot go wrong. Getting back to it, you could get yourself in trouble in Elgin. There were spots that weren't safe, and one side of the town was tougher than the other. I lived on the west side of town, the safe side, well, at least compared to the east side, and we had two high schools, Elgin High School on the east side and my high school, Larkin, on the west side. Larkin had some gangs, but they were largely a non-factor because if they were real gangbangers, they were skipping school at Larkin and hanging out with the real tough guys at Elgin High School. That's where the real gangbangers were. It was much tougher, a much tougher high school than Larkin. Well, fights happened all the time back then. It was just a part of life. It was no big deal. I was desensitized to it. My brother and I fought nonstop. My brother was 2 grades ahead of me, but we were the same size. He was a little bit smaller for his age, and I was a little bit bigger for my age. And we fought literally like every other day, knockdown, drag out fights, relentless, like cardio type fights. Neither one of us could get an edge on the other, which is why it lasted for years and years and years. My poor mother. We did have a gentleman's agreement to not punch each other in the face, and that held for the duration because we weren't dummies. We were always mindful to keep Dad out of it. Although one time I was so frustrated, I tried to punch my brother in the face, and he caught it. I still remember it. It was like a cheesy action movie, except he didn't say anything cool. And he just gave me this bewildered look like, holy crap, you just tried to punch me in the face. And I was like, holy crap, you just caught my punch. And he made me pay. I never tried that again. To this day, I would not mess with that dude. Now he's got 30 LBs on me. That might not end up good for me. Okay, so by middle school, I had a lot of practice fighting. Wasn't a big deal. Let's say generally desensitized to it, okay? I didn't like it, but it was what it was. I always viewed it as a last resort. Nothing I put too much thought into. But we're talking about fist fights that turn into wrestling until one guy says, okay. There's only so much you can get hurt in that kind of fight. But the gangbangers carried switchblades. You mess with them, you're going to get poked. And guys got poked. That scared the bejesus out of me. Getting stabbed? Are you kidding me? I don't blame them. Most of the gangbangers in my school were little guys. They're like 5.5 feet tall, 80 pounds soaking wet type little guys. A switchblade levels the playing field against a corn-fed giant. And just so you know, I'm talking about 1982, 1983, 7th grade right here for me. Guns weren't really around yet, certainly not on our side of town. So, you may remember I lived way out in the country. So I took a bus to school and back. And in junior high, after classes were over, we would wait for our buses in a field next to the school. There was zero supervision back in those days. We just formed our own lines where the buses would pick us up. No big deal. The wait was around 30, 40 minutes. Being kids, we'd goof around in the field until the buses came. Well, enter Federico. There was a gangbanger named Federico. He's got a great name, but I'll just use the first name. Well, Frederico would walk over from the high school and kind of passive aggressively torment us. He was like a frenemy, and we were scared of him. I was a big kid who had gotten in a couple fights, so every time Frederico came through the bus stop, he messed with me, and I had to eat humble pie. Now, it was easy for me to eat humble pie because I knew Frederico carried a switchblade. He showed it to us. Could I crush Frederico if he didn't have that switchblade? Without question. And Frederico knew that too. I think that's why he got such a kick out of it. But here's a fun fact about me. Never lost a fight. Not counting my brother. Those weren't real fights. That was more like UFC training for morons. I'm talking about fights. And you've heard me talk about fighting a lot, right? Never lost one. Sounds really impressive, doesn't it? Well, it's not nearly as impressive as you would think. I just wanted to sound tough for a second. That's why you have to be careful these days. It's so easy to manipulate data to make yourself look better. Drives me nuts when I see people do it. I hate fake people. My undefeated status is not because I'm tough or a great fighter. The most impressive part about that stat, by a long shot, is actually a two-parter. First, and super important, is my ability to identify whether that person can beat me up. This is crucial. And if so, second, doing what it takes to not fight that person. Communicate, apologize if necessary. If they're really big, run. I haven't had to do that yet because I'm a pretty agreeable person, but if dude was scary enough and wants a piece of me for some reason, I'll commit to cheetah mode. I'm not proud. I don't want to get punched in the face. I'm 56. I remember right after we brought our first son home, I was going to Home Depot by myself, and in the parking lot, I honked at this truck that cut me off kind of aggressively. And obviously, along with the honk, I gave him the bird, which he returned, and that got me a little fired up. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I was anxious to give him some feedback about his driving, and we were both going to the Home Depot, so naturally, I aggressively tailgated him the entire way, ringing my steering wheel. The old Elgin blue collar in me was coming out, and I was thinking, oh, you're so lucky I have a baby at home. And then I parked right next to him, and when that guy got out of his truck, he said, "You want some, mister?" It was a good question, mostly because of the aggressive tailgating I was doing prior, which, here comes the honesty again, was probably 2 times worse than him initially cutting me off. Oops. He was a young guy, maybe 25. He was country, and he looked like he could deliver a country beating. He had fresh mud on his work boots. He wasn't big, but he was tall and lanky with broad shoulders, and he had long arms. And it looked like he wanted to fight. I did not. I didn't even question it. I just knew that would be a bad outcome. I didn't want any of that. Pro tip, watch out for lanky dudes with long arms, and watch out for country dudes. So I told him, You drove like an idiot, and I walked as fast as I could towards the store and witnesses. Trying the entire time to look like I wasn't trying to speed walk. Yeah, I made a mistake. I would not have fought that dude. I would have chickened out. Actually, I did. Technically, I did chicken out. More honesty for you. Like I said, Mama didn't raise no fool. I was prepared to run to avoid a country beating, even though it looked like he was probably athletic enough to catch me in his work boots, which would have been the absolute worst case scenario, wrongly starting a fight, running from the fight, getting caught running by a guy in work boots, and then getting the country beat down. That is a terrible start to a Saturday, especially when you have a baby at home. Thankfully, fighting isn't a thing anymore. You can't stop progress. When I was in college, there'd be a bar fight, and the person that lost would just be carried out of the bar. That was it. Now people don't even fight. They just shove each other, and the police arrest both of them, even the innocent person. Nothing's perfect. This is good. We're not barbarians. Fighting should not be an option. There are exceptions to that rule, of course. But it's great that we're out of those caveman days. And where am I going with this? Stay with me. So even though fighting is no longer a thing, to this day, every room I'm in, subconsciously, my brain sizes up the people in that room. I think it's to see if there are any Fredricos. Dudes I need to watch my step around. I say subconsciously because I'm not really aware of it. But if my brain thinks there's a person around that could beat me up, it alerts me. It's like a Fredrico alarm. It puts that person on my radar. Like, uh-oh, that's a tough-looking dude. I don't think about fighting them. I just make a note they're there. Is that normal for dudes? I don't know. Or did Fredrico do that to me? Was it a trauma? That's all I got. Like I said, if it's trauma, it's not impactful. It's kind of a quirk. But I think it's this quirk that alerted me to my next observation that we're going to talk about here. Something I find fascinating. This place, Saugatuck, so great. What's my observation? Remember last episode, I said I was in Michigan, the land of the giants? That's it. The giants of the Midwest. This is where they live. The giants. Like I told you last episode, I'm in Western Michigan right now. Good Lord, these people are huge. I think it's the Vikings. I think the Vikings came through the Great Lakes and settled all over the Midwest, I think. If it's not the Vikings, it's their cousins. Even though the internet is right at my fingertips, you'd be amazed at how many of my theories are still unverified. Mostly because they aren't important, like this, or serious. This one is particularly suspect because it's based on two things. I think I remember that about the Vikings from history class, but mostly because I was walking around the Menards in Holland, which is like the Home Depot here, and my Fredrico alarm was going bonkers. And I'm looking up at one giant after another, and I'm like, am I on the set of Vikings? And then it all made sense. These giants are the descendants of Vikings. Are you kidding me? How cool is that? Even if I'm wrong and they're like Viking cousins, all of a sudden, I just made the connection because these guys literally, they look like the extras on Vikings. The beards, the whole 9 yards. Have you seen that show, Vikings, on HBO? It's like a loose historical fiction. It's incredible. I guess a lot of the stuff didn't happen in real life, go figure. But the way they shot it and the way they lived apparently was pretty indicative of, kind of how it was. I found that fascinating. And one of the things that I found most fascinating was how big they were. Because they're like 4 or 5 regular dudes like me, and then 3 giants in back of them. Giants. It's the same thing here in Western Michigan. Go to a Menards or a Meijer, which is the big grocer up here. They're everywhere you look. We're close to Holland, Michigan, which is a really nice place. So we shop there for a variety of stuff. And Holland, as the name might suggest, has a large Dutch population, literally and figuratively. Incredible people. A lot of respect for the people up here. Fun fact, I can make a room Dutch in 2 moves. First move, ask anybody short to leave. Second move, ask anybody overweight to leave. 80% of what's left in that room is going to be Dutch. Just solid, wonderful people. Okay, don't get me wrong. The South has tall people. I know they have tall people. The difference is they weigh like 120, 130 pounds. They look like if you ran into them with a shopping cart, they'd break. Not hardy. There are some giants down south, but few and far between. That's why they're so special. And let's be clear about the kind of height I'm talking about here. 6'5" and up. And every inch after 6'5" is significant. It's kind of like the Richter scale, where an 8.0 earthquake is 10 times more powerful than a 7.0 earthquake. You're special at 6'5". You will get attention in any room you walk into. 6'6", wow. 6'7", what? My cousin's son is 6'7". He gets asked how tall he is so many times. He carries cards around for when he's too tired to answer. 6'8"? Hey, come here. You gotta see this guy. 6'9"? If you're 6'9", you have to duck through door frames. The doctor that diagnosed my dad, he ducked to get through the door. He might have been 7 foot, and he was proportionate. Not just proportionate. He was ripped. One of the largest humans I have ever seen. And the kindest. Thank you. No pun intended. These people, just for their height, are big deals wherever they go. Almost. Now, are these people a big deal in Holland, Michigan? Not so much. Giants. Everywhere. 6'5" is entry level. That's a small giant up here. And even so, that guy's tipping the scales at 260, 270. And by that, I mean they look like a regular person. Proportionate. Just a giant person. You go to a Menards, in every part of the store, you will see giants. You will see monsters in there that are close to 7 feet tall on the regular. They must weigh, 300 pounds? They're not fat. They're proportionate. That's just how much a giant weighs. They are substantial human beings. It's hard. I don't know how else to put it. The only thing they're missing is a huge Viking sword and a shield. My son heard me talking about this to a friend, and we were in a Menards, and he said, "Okay, Dad, where are these giants you talked about within 30 seconds. I was like, there's one. Jeez, look at that one. There's another. And he was like, oh, man. Because he hadn't really noticed before. Thankfully, he doesn't have a Frederico alarm. They're just big, big people. Now when we go out, we just for fun, we point them out. It's amazing. It's like being at a human zoo with really cool animals walking all over the place. If you took the customers from my Menards in Holland, Michigan, and then the customers from my Home Depot in Atlanta, Georgia, gave them both swords and shields and set them to battle against each other in an open field, massacre. It wouldn't last 2 seconds. No offense, Atlanta. If it were gunplay, we'd toast them. Heck, they'd be impossible to miss. But we don't stand a chance. Here's what I don't understand. All these giants in Holland, why don't they go places where there aren't giants like Atlanta? Why don't they leave? Maybe giants like being around other giants? I'm just saying. If any of those guys moved to Atlanta, they would own the place. We've got a couple of giants in the South, and they do own the town. They walk into a room, and everybody's like, whoa, look at that dude. If you're one of those giants and you move to Atlanta, forget about it. You're going to be a star. You stay in Holland, and you're just John de Yorkengraf. It's human nature. People are fascinated with big things. We are, especially dudes, more specifically, morons. Which, as you know, includes me from time to time. If you had a baby pool full of fish and there was one giant fish in there, all the attention would be on that giant fish. Wow, look at that big one. Now, if you had a baby pool and despite all odds had a ton of giant fish in there and one regular fish, all the attention would be on that cute little fish. Oh, look at the little guy. Do each one of those giant fish deserve the same attention as the giant fish in the first pool? Yeah. They're not going to get it because there's a bunch of them all in the same pool. Very few giants in Atlanta. In fact, every once in a while, somebody will refer to me as a big guy. Do you know how many times I've taken that seriously? 0. And don't get me wrong, I'll take a compliment. I'll take a compliment that's not even meant for me. But when you refer to me as a big guy, what are you, new? Where I'm from, the Midwest, I'm regular. Tons of giants in the Midwest. That's why you have to make adjustments when you come up here from the South. You can get yourself in trouble. In Atlanta, when I get cut off by a driver, I'm probably gonna give him some feedback. But when I'm in Michigan, not so quick. I'll make sure that driver can't beat the hell out of me before I honk. I'm trying to extend my undefeated streak. And let me tell you something. I don't know if it's a thing, but I've seen a lot of these giants driving like maniacs. So head on a swivel. Last summer, I watched this Ford F-250, a beautiful truck. And back of me, he was literally forcing people out of his way, out of the left-hand lane. And of course, I'm like, I'm going to let this turkey know that's not okay. Because it's my place, right? I should be doing that. And then he pulls up next to me, probably because he saw me straining to get a look at this beautiful dark green F-250 that's recklessly driving and endangering my fellow citizens. He was giant. He filled the entire driver's side of his truck. You couldn't even see his steering wheel. Just two giant hands. Those mitts probably popped my dome like it was a grape, like Game of Thrones. He gave me a look like, yeah, do you have something to say? I didn't hesitate. I gave him a submissive, tight-lipped nod that was meant to convey, no, sir. I've got nothing to say. I'm just upset at those people back there for slowing you down. Please carry on. Like I said, pride's not going to get in the way of me keeping my undefeated streak alive. Okay, one last thing, and I'll go. Do you guys have some things that you own and you just love? I do. And I know it's bad to be materialistic. I'm just wondering, how far are we allowed to go? Because I love a bunch of stuff. Too much to mention. Yet, I don't feel like I'm materialistic. I'm kind of dabbling in materialism. But I feel like all the stuff I love, it's earned its place in my heart. I love furniture for some reason. A really great piece of furniture will get me excited. I can't explain it. It's weird. Especially outdoor, really good outdoor furniture. Stuff that looks sharp and can weather the elements. So by default, I'm not talking about wood, outdoor furniture, because that's a disaster. Making outdoor furniture from wood is just asking for trouble. Square peg, round hole. I'll admit, it looks great. It looks fantastic in the beginning, especially teak. But that's in the beginning. A year later, and it's like, for real, looks terrible. You either have to retreat it or paint it. Both options not attractive. It basically turns into something that's going to be difficult to throw away. The reason why I'm bringing this up is we have these plastic Adirondack chairs, both in Atlanta and Michigan. I love those chairs. They have earned a place in my materialism. We have some really cool green ones in Atlanta. They're made by Loll, L-O-L-L. I don't know how to pronounce that. Incredibly cool, a little pricey, worth every penny. Got them probably 10 years ago. Still look great. We bought some white ones for Michigan. They're made by Polywood. I think my wife got a really good deal on them at Target, maybe like 5 years ago. Half the price of the Lolls. Same thing as the Loll chairs. They're made from recycled plastic, Coke bottles, HDPE, whatever, something like that. I just pressure washed them, and I am not kidding you. It's like they're brand new. Fantastic chairs. When have you ever been happy with an outdoor purchase? 5 to 10 years out. Love these chairs. So comfortable. We'll probably have them for another 20 years. Here they are. Look at that. They look brand new. Just saying. All right. That's it. Trying to keep them short and sweet. If you want to contact the show, you can reach us at parkerduque@gmail.com. And please, can you tell your friends about this? Send them a link. Oh, and also hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a message. So 3 things you're supposed to do. I know about that now. Those help me if you want. And if you can't tell, I need help. You know what you can't stop? Progress.